Hello, I'm Keith with the Schmidt Music Trombone Shop, back with another instrument review for you. And today I have another instrument from Yamaha. I hesitate to call it vintage because it's not really that old, but it is a previous generation of a current model, specifically their YSL-671T Alto Trombone with trill valve here. So I've done at least one video about the 871, the current Yamaha model here, but I haven't been able to spend a lot of time with the 671 predecessor up until now. And so when I had one come through the shop, I said, boy, I really need to grab a review of this here. Obviously, you'll notice some unique factors with this, not the least of which is the trill valve and some other things. And of course, it's always interesting to see what a manufacturer changes through different generations of their instruments. There are certainly some differences I'm noticing, and I'm going to be excited to share with you. So I'm going to take a play, talk about it afterwards. I'm going to be playing everything today on my S.E. Shire's Michael Davis plus a small shank mouthpiece. Until the current Yamaha 871 or 872 with valve alto trombone was introduced. Of course, the 671 was their premier and their only alto trombone here. And it's certainly an instrument that had a very strong reputation through its time. But of course, Yamaha, as we know, Yamaha is always a company that they're looking to improve things all the time. And so they're constantly making tweaks and additions and changes, etc. And so again, I was really curious to see what was the difference in the experience of this compared to the modern 871 or 872 here. So a lot of the basic specs haven't changed at all here. So like the 871, 872, it has a 7 1/8 inch valve, yellow brass, wider crook here on the tuning slide. Of course, we have this unique valve set up for the trill valve, which we'll talk about in a second here. It is a 470/490 dual bore hand slide, and the hand slide, frankly, is one of the most obvious changes that they've made with it, specifically that on the 871, it is a nickel silver outer tubes, nickel silver crook. On this one, on the 671, it is a yellow brass outer tubes and yellow brass crook. Now, I think just right off the bat with what I noticed in how it plays, I think that plays a role in what's going on here. The other thing that really sticks out to me as far as just the overall feel of the instrument, it feels a little bit heavier, and I don't think that's just because of the valve. I think the heft of it feels a little bit different, and I think that comes into play in what I'm experiencing with the response, with the sound. Now, of course, with the 671T, we have the trill valve. More often now we are seeing folks where we're putting valves on our altos, more often we're doing B-flat valves, right? But there is a place, obviously there's a tradition of doing the trill valves. I have my own personal opinions on it, but for some folks it makes a lot of sense. And so this design is kind of unique. With the modern 872, they have moved the valve closer down to the hand slide receiver, the normal kind of position for it, which allows them to put the trigger mechanism, obviously, in the normal kind of position. But with the 671, with the choice to put the valve further up, of course, we had come up with a little bit different linkage. And so they came up with this really unique adjustable kind of leather strap here. And with the, you can adjust the height, you can adjust kind of the rotational position, etc. Honestly, it's not terrible. It's not my favorite thing ever. But it's fine. It's nothing that I would say, oh, I really need to change construction. Yeah, for that kind of thing, it's perfectly fine. The overall experience I have playing with this instrument is that it, like we would expect, it plays a lot like the 871. I feel like it's a little bit darker sound, a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more open. But definitely I feel like it's a little bit broader sound, a little bit, not hollow in the middle, that's not the right thing at all, but I think just a little bit more open sound overall. I think there's a couple things going into that. I think part of that is, like I said, I feel like it's just a little bit heavier, which I think is giving some weight, some mass to the sound. I think the outer hand slide construction is playing a big role with that. Almost always, not every time there, but in most alto setups we're seeing nowadays, we're doing at least nickel silver outer tubes, if not outer tubes and crook. And I think that's because a lot of makers find that nickel silver construction, maybe helps a little bit with the weight and the balance. That might be part of it. But I think more of it is about giving us a little bit different projection. We've talked about nickel silver and what it does before. It's not about making the sound lighter. I think it's about giving it a little bit different density, a little bit more immediacy to the sound, and again, just a little bit more directionality. And I think in part that's what I'm feeling with this, is that it feels just a little bit more open within all of it. But at the same time, I'm certainly noticing certain spots where I think the valve is causing a little bit of compression. And it's not bad, honestly. This is, of all of the altos I've played with the valve, this feels amongst the more free-blowing. And there's a couple reasons I kind of wonder why. Part of it, I do wonder, by putting the valve up on top here instead, does that allow them to open up the taper a little bit? Now, realistically, probably not much, because we've got the tuning slide mechanism sitting here. Of course, we have to have parallel tube here. So all of this has to be parallel, but they might be able to do a little bit of tapering here, which might give us a little bit. And it's a fairly large valve as far as alto valves go. And so that could be certainly having a role as well. With that being said, there's a few spots where I feel a little bit of compression. Especially our 8th partial E flat, boy, I feel like I'm pushing a little bit. I'm having to work really hard to keep it sitting right up on top of there. Similarly, as we're getting down into the 2nd partial, and again, how often are we playing there in alto? But I feel I can feel a little compression there. The pedal E flat, again, not really usable in alto. I feel a little bit of a push, but outside of the extremes, I'm not noticing it all that much. And frankly, it's a very easy playing alto. Intonation is just fine. It's using the standard 3rd position, 4th position tuning with it versus some of the other more German setups where the slide positions are in different places as compared to the bell. Everything feels comfortable there. Intonation felt just fine. And one of the things I do think, like I said, I feel like so many of the kind of earlier generations of Yamaha horns, it does have a little bit different character to it. There are things, again, for me, I'm looking for an alto kind of sound. I think something like the 871, where it is maybe just a touch lighter, feels like it has just a little bit more directionality. That's maybe something I'm looking for. But it's a wonderfully open playing instrument. I could see it being, something, depending on the solo work we're kind of doing. I certainly felt like it had flexibility, in thinking more lyrical or more technical sections, I can see this being something that would really sit nicely within a section, sitting in, frankly, even a little bit larger chamber ensemble settings where I feel like you can get some real power out of it. My only question is, and not being able to sit in front of it, I can't really tell, am I going to be able to get enough directionality with it to actually get the sound over the orchestra? But I think it could be a really great ensemble instrument, something for somebody's looking for maybe a little bit darker, warmer alto sound in their chamber settings, in their solo settings. I think there are really some great things going on with this here. And then, of course, we have the trill valve. If we're going to have to put a valve on it, I'm more of a fan of the B-flat valve. I feel like it has more possibilities. I think it brings a little bit more to the table. The trill valve has a place, right? There are certain people who really believe strongly in it. Fantastic. Great. So wouldn't be my choice. But again, of all of the valve setups I played, this one doesn't feel overly restrictive and stuffy. So yeah, it's a great instrument, and obviously it's something that Yamaha has used as a jumping off point here, but I think it's certainly a great playing instrument in its own right. So, as always, I hope you enjoyed my review. If you have any thoughts or questions about the 671T, maybe you have this one, maybe you have its successor, the 871 or the 872, please feel free to share those in the comments. If you haven't already done so, please think about subscribing to our channel, hitting that notification button so when we put up new videos, you see about it. Think about giving this video a thumbs up, becoming a part of our viewer community. And of course, you can always find the Trombone Shop on Facebook and Instagram. As always, thanks for watching.